Hey, what's up? What the fuck nicks? What the fuck heads? What the fucking ears? This is the Out for Smokes podcast, and we got a very Italian episode of the show today. We haven't really done an Italian. We haven't really done an Italian episode, so I'm excited. I want to take you guys back to the year 1892. The largest lynching ever committed on U.S. soil was done against Italian Americans, and then a bunch of guys came over here and they said, no, we're not going to do that. You're not going to just lynch us, okay? You're not going to just hang a bunch of us because our penises are too big and we're too smart. You can't just do that to our people. What I want to do today, we're going to talk about John Gotti in this episode. I think we have a great story here for you guys. We might not be, we might not be historians. We might have watched half a documentary today, and we're doing this on sort of tangential knowledge that we have. But every week I text the guys. I say, what do you guys want to talk about? What are you excited to talk about this week? And I was thinking, I think if we talked about John Gotti, there's a lot there. There's a really good story here. There's great characters, and so yeah, we want to tell you a good story.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start?
Well, there's a Netflix docuseries called Get Gotti, which I watched. It's kind of mediocre, but there's also a better one by A&E called Gotti, Godfather and Son, which I also watched. So I got, we got a general sketch of the biography of the man, John Gotti. We can kind of go through it, talk about his life, his experiences, how things have changed. People don't hang out in social clubs all day anymore.
No.
I think that's been a real detriment. It's caused an increase in the suicide epidemic, mental illness. People are on their phones all day instead of at a social club that the FBI is monitoring.
Right.
Hanging out.
Nobody drinks coffee out of little cups anymore.
Nobody has a
walk around
cappuccino machine running, which interferes with the FBI bug, so they can't get good sound quality of you talking about a murder, talking about how you're going to shoot some union guy.
Yeah.
For fucking up your friend's restaurant.
Yeah, just all day. I used to do a podcast called The Sit Down. All those episodes are still probably up on YouTube, I think. I did it with the great Frank Terranova. Very funny guy. And we started with Frank Terranova. Frank left the show, and I continued doing the podcast. So I've studied a lot of different mobsters. A lot of these guys have very different backgrounds. Some of them are born into the life and brought into it. Some guys, some guys have families that are already involved. John Gotti was a little different. His father was a day laborer, and he didn't respect his father because as a kid he was like, my father's a fucking loser.
Right.
Instead of like 13 kids and a gambling addiction.
Yeah.
John Gotti was born in 1940. He grew up in poverty in Brownsville, East New York, Brooklyn, which was then and is still today the poorest neighborhood in New York. I mean, maybe some parts of the Bronx, but his father was abusive. He would come home drunk and beat him up and say, "This is just in case you think of doing something bad. Just in case you think about doing something bad." So it's like John Gotti grew up in, one of the hardest, poorest streets in the country. And so by like 14 or 12, he was already involved in criminal activity. He was already on the street. When he was 14 years old, he was trying to steal a cement mixer from a construction site, and it fell and it crushed his toes, left him with a permanent limp.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he had a fascinating life, and it's, he later becomes, obviously in the 80s, a media sensation. He's a very charming, very charismatic guy, but you just kind of see when you like grow up in that kind of hard scrabble environment where you have to survive on the street, you do learn to be tough, but you also kind of learn how to be charming, how to talk to people, how to be flamboyant, how to make an impression. So these are all life skills that sometimes you can only get through coming up through these kinds of environments.
Right.
Yeah, that someone running for president could learn from. In my opinion.
Who's that?
Anybody running for president can learn from John Gotti.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people liked him. That's like, anytime I watch something about him, I go, wait, what? Like, they go, all the cops were looking into it. And they go, and the people had boom boxes above their head and, we're cheering for him. So I guess we'll kind of get into that too, as to why some people would cheer for him.
Yeah,
and
what I thought
they
we
are, are not retarded or not, or whatever.
what I thought we could do with this episode is we could talk about some of the other people in his life and sort of compare him to the other people that he worked with and interacted with and stuff like that. I did hear a story about him from some documentary that I think it was his son saying it in a different documentary, but he said that one time he robbed this guy's warehouse and the guy was looking for him, and then Gotti confronted him. This is like, I don't know if this is real or not, but it is a good story. Because he walks up to the guy and he says, "Hey, my name's John Gotti. I heard you're looking for me." And then he pulls a gun out and puts it to his head. He's like, "I'll put 2 bullets in your head right now." And I think that like people need leaders,
Yeah. Well, and then that guy became one of his best friends, became part of his crew. His name was Willie Boy Johnson, and he actually has a very sad story, Willie Boy Johnson, because he was half Italian, half Native American, I believe Lenape, but so he was bullied, like coming up in the neighborhood. His father was another abusive alcoholic. He was apparently like thrown off the roof of the school at some point, and he suffered brain damage.
Jeez.
So he had, a very tough life. Also grew up on the street, became very close with John Gotti, but he became an FBI informant.
Yeah.
And he spent 16 years as an FBI informant. And then at one of John Gotti's trials where they failed to get him, the really incompetent U.S. assistant attorney revealed that he was an FBI informant. That Willie Boy Johnson was an FBI informant at the trial, and so of course he was shot and killed after.
For 16 years, they got guys being informants.
Yeah,
you should collect a pension from the FBI after that.
Yeah, no, only if you traffic drugs off Air America do you get a pension.
Yeah, why do people abuse their kids? It's fucked up.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, we'll look into that. On the next episode, we'll dive into that. But yeah.
So Gotti comes up on the street by age 17. He's a driver for Carmine Doc Fatico. He's a late 40s guy in the Gambino family. He's a captain. And he's like, John Gotti drives him to the racetrack almost every day. And he hangs out at the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club in Queens, New York, just like a social club. And then Fatico has legal problems. John becomes the acting captain of his crew. So he moves up really quick. And it's like he's recognized even by the cops on the street. Like this is, with John Gotti, what they recognize is this guy's charismatic. He's charming, but they also recognize he's not a womanizer. Like he spends most of his time with his men, like the people, in his crew or whatever. And they recognize that it's like, yeah, this guy's going to move up in the organization. He's going to advance because he has that hustle mindset. He's not out there chasing skirts or whatever. He's very dedicated to the lifestyle.
Right. And he was no fap, I heard.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a quarter Irish.
Yeah. Do you guys remember? It's kind of unfortunate that we've never been in a position where we've had to choose a violent lifestyle. Whether it's joining Hamas, whether it's joining the mafia. There's that speech that Tony gives Melfi in season 2 of Sopranos, where he's like, they opened up the gates because they needed worker bees, but some of us we were gonna like sort of build our own life and take what we wanted. And he kind of says that's why why the mafia was formed. So I think it can be kind of a good story, It's about people who wanted to sort of build their own thing and kind of, did illegal stuff to get there.
I mean, there is something really cool about, just beating the shit out of a guy who honks at you in traffic.
Yeah.
And then when he goes and tells the NYPD, you have him beaten into the hospital.
Yeah.
Have his arm broken and put in a sling. And then he goes to trial, and then the DA makes him go to trial and testify against you. And then when asked to pick you out in the courtroom, he says, "I don't remember," because he's so afraid of you.
Yeah.
So it is nice to just like not take shit.
Yeah.
Not deal with people saying, "Oh, you almost walked into me because you were staring at your phone while walking," and just being like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah.
It's nicer. Well, there is that part of you that's like, no, actually, I shouldn't have to take that.
Yeah.
I should be a mob dog.
Exactly. But what I've always said about John Gotti is like so many different mobsters have come and gone, but he is like the most famous. He's the name that we remember.
Right.
So why do you think that is?
You know, it's interesting because he's obviously they talk about Carlo Gambino, the older guy is much more media shy, much more traditional kind of Godfather stuff, and that's what you would think for the life of crime. You want to be in the shadows, you don't want to be on the front page. But John Gotti became such a media sensation, and he so much enjoyed being a media sensation.
Yeah,
that he was, he resonates with Zoomers and millennials,
right.
and our social media addictions.
Because he definitely wasn't the first like celebrity gangster.
No, not really.
I think Bugsy Siegel palled around with a lot of celebrities and stuff like that. But
I guess there's that moment in time too where it's like between 85 and 95, like when he gets busted and it's like, he's on the paper every day and stuff, where media is like finally in everybody's home and they got us, and every reporter needs a story. That's why like the OJ case is so much more popular than other things. Why Gotti feels popular, because it's like everything was a part of the zeitgeist, right? Doesn't it feel like that?
Yeah.
Like there's these like top tier, like everything felt like WrestleMania,
Everything
like
was a bigger deal.
Yeah, everything felt like Andre versus Hogan.
Because there wasn't as much to watch.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much
and
going
so
on.
finally, now all of this new 80s media is going to be reporting on the mob. Who's the head of the mob? It's John Gotti.
Yeah.
And boy, can he talk, it's like one of those things. Timed out well, I guess.
So then do you want to get into
because people go, he wanted it. Like they go, that was his downfall. He loved the attention.
Yeah.
But it's like, but it was also one of the first times that it was like, excuse me, sir. And everyone had a camera and could film a guy. And
right.
So it's not so much his fault. What is he going to hide?
Yeah.
He's just going to try to live his life, and everyone's up his ass.
Yeah.
It's cool to beat the federal government.
Sure.
Nobody likes the feds.
Right.
And it's cool when they try to
Yes.
put you in prison for life 3 times and you beat them 3 times. And that's the lesson of the John Gotti story is, of course, he would be done in by his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, who turns government informant. And Sammy the Bull told the feds, he confessed to 19 murders. He killed 19 people. He did 5 years in prison. And that's the lesson is you can kill 19 people if you help the government get somebody who embarrassed them slightly.
Yeah.
That's all they care about is when you make them look bad and you get nicknamed the Teflon Don, they hate you more than anybody.
Right.
So you just help them get revenge and you can kill a bunch of people. You can be a prolific serial killer and get away with it.
It's really funny when you watch these documentaries because the feds are like they're still very like pissed at him. And they're like, I don't understand what the big deal was. I don't know. It kind of bothered me that he became like a celebrity.
Right. That's the best part of the documentary because it's like the Netflix documentary, the Get Gotti thing, like a big chunk of it is just the police sucking themselves off about how clever it is.
Yeah.
And then they're like, but why did everybody like Gotti? I mean, he was a crit. It's like, because we fucking hate you guys.
Yeah.
Because you guys are really annoying.
Yeah.
And you can only talk about how fucking clever you all are.
Yeah.
After you uphold this regressive system that says you can't beat the shit out of a refrigerator repairman for honking at you. You can't. Some Polish refrigerator repairman honked at John Gotti, so of course he and his friend beat the shit out of him and stole his wallet.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You should be able to do that.
Yeah. It's a great lesson on like what to do when you're powerful.
Right.
Because you have somebody like Paul Castellano, who was the boss of the Gambino family. And he lived in like this giant like white mansion.
Staten Island, yeah.
In Staten Island. Yeah. He lived in this giant mansion and he was very like he definitely made a lot of money. He was very powerful. But I think the reason Gotti was able to kill him and not deal with any repercussions was because he kind of had the loyalty of the other guys on the street because he had been on the street. I think Paul Castellano sort of came. He was like the son-in-law of Carlo Gambino or something like that.
Yeah, well, when Carlo Gambino died, he picked Paul Castellano. Carlo Gambino dies in 1976. He picks Paul Castellano to succeed him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, John Gotti would have Paul Castellano killed December 16, 1985, outside Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
5:30 in the afternoon, right?
Something like that, yeah.
But you kind of think about like what it means to be a mob boss. It's like, all right, I'm the mob boss. Everybody works for me. I have all the money coming in, and then it's like, well, what do you really do with that money? You know, and it's like you can either be an old man who sits in an apartment and just accumulates money, and you can be, somebody like Chin Gigante who's like who's like pretending he's insane and peeing in the street. Or you can like enjoy. Yeah. I guess that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think he's crazy,
but
he's
all these
actually
guys,
a millionaire.
but all these guys like hated all these old school, bosses. They all hated Gotti and like wanted him dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vinny the Chin tried to have him killed, actually, for the Paul Castellano hit.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when you flaunt and stuff, and they killed him. It was like right before Christmas, 5:30 in the afternoon, in a busy part of Manhattan on like 46th Street. And so it's like we don't book the mob like television, like we don't do it during primetime hours and make sure everybody sees it. It is something that we're supposed to hide because it's the mob, and it's not just a few of us getting in trouble. It's our families and our kids, this and that, and like at the end of the day, Gotti. And this whole situation, it's like, yeah, Sammy ratted him out, but it's like 200 people were arrested, almost 200 people. You could blame Gotti for being like, hey, let's make the mob famous. Like, it's not supposed to be. Yeah. You are supposed to hide in your riches because it's illegal. Yeah. And you have a lot of people under you doing illegal things who can get in a lot of trouble, and not just them, but, their families can be destroyed.
Yeah, and but that's not fun.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
But it's like the only thing I do disagree, where I go like, yeah, if this was the music industry, I'd be like, everybody should hear Gotti's music. They're fucking great, Yeah. But it's like, it's a type of industry that you actually, a big part of it is, hey, shut up. Yeah. And he couldn't do that. Yeah. So that's unfortunate.
It really is the two types of mob bosses, is Vinny the Chin Gigante and John Gotti. It's like wearing flashy $2,000 suits to your trial, or just like pissing yourself in public so people leave you alone.
Those are like the only options.
Wearing a bathrobe, pretending to be senile, and pissing yourself. Yeah. So nobody pays attention.
Yeah. I guess I spent a lot of time thinking about like what are the most important things in life. And like, yeah, obviously money's important, family's important, being able to provide for your family is important, but also like being liked by everybody, I guess at least to me, is important. Yeah. I do like, I think more than anything, I want everybody to like me and think I'm great. But that's like, I do kind of want to be popular,
because as soon as you admit that, or like people will sense that you want everyone to like you. There's just people who don't like things because everybody likes it. It's just impossible.
Yeah. But I think that there's something to be said about like the way that you treat people and make people feel. I don't know. Very, very charismatic guy. I was on a podcast last week and we were talking about what it means to be charismatic. And I'm not really sure. I don't know who, like, who do we know? Who do we know that's charismatic? I don't know anybody. I mean, nobody really, like, off the top of my head that I know personally. Truly. But I think John Gotti, like, was. And so I think that kind of does, like, mean something. There's a way that you want to, like, conduct yourself and live your life.
Yeah, he conducted himself like he was running for mayor. It's very sweet.
Like you want to be cool to some extent. You want to figure out what it means to be cool.
Yeah. There's all these stories of him, like something bad would happen in the news. Not even a big deal. Like a boy got his dog stolen or something, and it was like, let's get that dog back, or like, let's make sure he got another dog. Like there's all these little things, things that the news can report on and go, hey, did you see John Gotti like handing out $50 bills to the home? Yeah, it's hard to deny the good, but then you can always question it and go, oh, is that so people would like him, so he could have people shot in the back of the head?
Yeah.
In limos and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah. There was a guy that I worked with. He lived in East New York, and he said that John Gotti would come by and like hang out with the kids. He was a black guy from East New York, but he said Gotti would come out and hang out and like hand out fireworks.
That's cute.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was like, I read that.
But you're right, Scott. I think whether or not it's like true, there is something to be. Whether or not it's authentic, there is something to be said. You have to question it,
because it's like, like every rapist, there's like 10 women who are like, well, he was my best friend, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
Sure. It's because they have to lay the lie. Yeah.
But I think it is good to be popular. You don't want to try too hard to be popular. But if you're
doing crime or being innocent, your goal should be walking around, trying to make eye contact, shaking hands, saying, "Hey, do you need a jacket?" And it seemed like John Gotti did shit like that.
You got to make people feel good.
Italian Robin Hood. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned he grew up in East New York, but the
Yeah, he also lived in like a 4-bedroom house in Howard Beach. Like he didn't,
eventually he moved out to Howard Beach.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so
he didn't live in a giant mansion like
no, he was a man of the people.
Yeah.
He was adjacent to the neighbor who accidentally killed his son with his car.
Well, that's a bummer.
then-
I mean, I was that's really sad. He was
and then his wife heard him having a barbecue and having too much fun, so she made Gotti kill him.
Yeah. So what was Frankie Gotti was his son.
Son, he was 12 years. Yeah, I believe he was 12 years old.
And so he's riding his bike in the street one day
In 1980, yeah.
and his neighbor runs him over with a car.
Yeah.
Which that's got to be such a weird thing to be like, yes, I just hit a kid with a car. Okay, I think the kid's dead, but at least he's not John Gotti's
it's like,
son.
I messed up. Oh, I really messed up. It's
boy.
a kid.
yeah,
Oh
right.
no.
Right.
Whose kid is it?
Right, because you're just drunk out of your mind,
Yeah, it's John Gotti's kid because he has a mink coat on for some reason. And Ray-Bans.
All right, let's be respectful here, Scott.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
But yeah, so then I think what happened was like he runs over John Gotti's kid, and then he didn't. Something happened where like he didn't go to the funeral, or he didn't like apologize in person.
There's
There's
a couple different the way the Godfather and Son documentary talks about it is the wife or the son John Gotti's wife, the mother of the kid who was killed, Frankie. She heard him having a barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
Was having too much fun, and she like ran after him with a bat or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like running away, but he said something like, "Your kid shouldn't have been on that fucking bike anyway," or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then, so then John Gotti takes a trip to Miami, so he's out of town, and then this guy's sitting in a diner, and three or four guys kidnap him out of the diner. They put him in the back of a truck, they beat him with baseball bats, and they shoot him, and then the body disappears.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's what little
And-
Frankie would have wanted. If I was 12 years old riding my fucking moped, I would definitely want the guy who hit me with his car to be tortured and killed.
But what now? Let me ask you this: what would you do if you ran over John Gotti's son? How would you
the fuck out.
How do you even handle that?
I'd keep driving west.
Yeah,
I would just go. Yeah.
I think
I would immediately be Googling weather in Guatemala.
Yeah.
Currency exchange in Havana.
You bury John Gotti's kid in the pet cemetery. You like drive to Pennsylvania.
It's like,
And
well,
then you bring him back the next day.
looks like it's time to download Duolingo Spanish app because I'm going to be speaking Spanish for the rest of my life.
Hey, John, I got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I ran over your kid with my car. The good news is I buried him in the pet cemetery, and now he's evil, but he's back.
No, we may have a good killer on our hands.
Yeah.
John, listen to me.
Yeah.
You bury John Gotti's kid in the pet cemetery. He comes back as a U.S. attorney.
Yeah.
He works for the FBI now.
He becomes a Fed, yeah.
What did you do to my son?
He plans January 6th, gets all those innocent people locked up. Yeah.
John, it's your son Frankie. I work for a fusion center now. I'm a
Yeah.
Fed. I gang stalk Americans.
Yeah. Why would you say that to the kid's mother though?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that part. You deserve everything you get. You can't say things like that.
Well, he didn't say. He said, "Why was the kid riding the bicycle?" But that's the other thing, like that Gotti Godfather and Son documentary.
She's like, "Oh, good point. I never thought about it that
it's
way."
like, oh, he should have had his driver's license. He's a little boy, you fucking idiot. That's why he was riding a bicycle.
Hey, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Now that I see it from your perspective.
Oh, he should have been in a spaceship, perhaps, you fucking moron.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, though,
I think that guy was drunk though.
he probably was.
Yeah.
But that,
Wait, driving? Or
Yeah.
at the
The
bar?
driver.
No,
Yeah.
the kid. The kid on the
Frankie-
The kid was
Shit-faced.
drunk. The kid was...
Frankie was wasted on his tricycle, dealing with learning his father was in the mafia.
Yeah.
But that Gotti Godfather and Son documentary on A&E, it's better than the Netflix one. I think it is a good documentary, but you do have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Like, John Gotti Jr.
Yeah.
Like he played a big part in making it. He's interviewed in a lot of it. Other members of the Gotti family are interviewed. It's like John Gotti Jr. like they're all consummate liars. So you do have to understand it's like that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but it's like that's what this episode is just going to be like. How we can tell the best story, I think.
Yeah.
Or what the takeaways are.
Right. So it's like
really...
the story that the guy said to their mother, what was he doing riding that bike anyways? That comes from, we don't know if he actually, it's like, oh yeah, this guy our father tortured and killed.
Yeah, right.
Let's get an anecdote about him being a dick into this document. So it's like, yeah, maybe he said it, maybe he didn't.
He said, "What was your son doing riding that bike anyway?" And also, I'm racist.
And that was the last straw for John. He just couldn't stand that.
Yeah.
Using those racial slurs.
Yeah. And also, I don't think women should be in positions of power.
There's like there's some John Gotti quote about like it's never okay to be an N-word.
Really?
Like, yeah, I don't know where it originates, but it's like, you know, I mean, so many people idolize this guy, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that before the show? Before I was singing his praises. Now I got to walk back all my comments.
A lot of great rap songs called John Gotti. Draco the Ruler did one.
Right.
But then there's like this other anecdote.
Maybe he said maybe what he said was it's never okay to act like an N-word.
Yeah, maybe he was doing a Chris Rock bit.
Yeah, maybe what he said was there's blacks and there's...
There's this other anecdote from the Netflix documentaries, one of John Gotti's associates. They talk about like once he started, you know, like after he beat the first case, like he was a celebrity, all his crew was celebrities. Like Andy Warhol did John Gotti's portrait for the cover of Time magazine. And so one of John
there's a reason everybody likes this guy.
So one of John Gotti's associates is saying like in the 80s, they were all just like at clubs with like Andy Warhol and David Bowie all doing coke together. And so he says Brooke Shields, the actress, came up to John Gotti and put her phone number like in his, you know, suit pocket or whatever. And so John Gotti just rips it up, and his associate asks like, "What the fuck are you doing? That's Brooke Shields. She just gave you her number." And he's like, "She's my daughter's age. I'm not gonna do that."
Oh, wow.
It's like,
Awesome.
it's like,
He's like, she's Mossad.
And you're right. All this could be totally made up.
right. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like these are all fucking mob liars. We don't know which of these stories are true.
No, but
They're so good at telling the stories.
But that's what I'm saying. But you got to give people stories.
Yes.
You know, and if that is true, like that is very cool.
Right. We stand an unproblematic king.
Yeah.
Who recognizes the power and balance in an age gap relationship.
Exactly. Hey, let it date Harvey Weinstein. It's not for me.
Yeah, they had celebrities at his trial. Grandpa Munster was there. That was like the only guy I recognized. But
Yo, my father, he always said trans women are women. Yo, my father said that, you know, hey, Black Lives Matter. My father actually invented the phrase Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, my father, he said, end the blockade.
Yeah.
One of the last things. End the siege of Gaza.
Yeah. Do you think he'd be pro? Because the thing is, like, whenever someone threatens institutional power, they always have to smear them. Whenever there's a charismatic leader, you know, if there's some Palestinian guy who's popular, they got to kill him with a car bomb.
Yeah, that's true.
With John Gotti, they got to kill him with stomach cancer. So,
got to kill him with a bullshit legal case.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Gotti Jr. said it was stomach cancer because of the water at that place.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that
at the
interview
prison?
with him? At the prison, yeah.
Oh.
He said he had wounds in his mouth from, I guess, because he got beat up or something. And they still made him drink the water there, even though they knew it had, like, dirty shit in it. And he was like, 4 months later, he had cancer, which is not how cancer works.
No, but but we all know the feds are haters.
Yeah, they're absolute haters, and they killed him, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Gotti got beat up in prison. Then he tried to pay the Aryan Brotherhood to kill the guy.
Yeah,
Beat him up. Yeah.
Well, one of the main FBI agents that was like tasked with with the case, he was this guy named Bruce Mao. He was from like Iowa or something like that, and he was a very mild mannered because to join the FBI, you can't even like have ever smoked weed.
They relaxed it a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Now I think,
but
you
at the time,
like 5 times or something.
Yeah. So it's funny the difference between like John Gotti and this guy who's very mild mannered and.
Well, Gotti was very anti-drug. I mean, in that, like, he told his kids, like, if you ever do drugs, I'm going to make sure you disappear, or, you know, shit like that.
Okay.
And and the feds could never connect him to actually dealing drugs. Like, as far as we know, John Gotti never dealt drugs, but people in his crew dealt drugs, and they kicked up a percentage to him, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and a big issue older mob guys had with him is like the drugs he wanted to bring in too, right? But that also seems like of the time. It's like, oh, we're not going to sell heroin and coke.
Mm-hmm.
It's the drug of the time, and we are the people that sell illegal things.
Right. Well, that was the big dispute with Paul Castellano, who he would have killed. Is Paul Castellano and some of the older school mob guys, who or the bosses or whatever, they were rich and they didn't want anybody in their association dealing drugs, because drugs came with, you know, a 20 or 30 year prison sentence, and the idea would be
Creates rats.
yeah, it would create rats. They would cooperate. So the edict was, if you deal drugs, you'll get killed. And of course, exceptions were made. People looked the other way. But Gotti, like, what eventually would lead him to kill Paul Castellano is in 1983, like 16 members of John Gotti's crew would be indicted for, among other things, some of it was drug trafficking charges. So Paul Castellano was like, we're going to have to kill these guys. And that included like Gotti's brother, his best friend, you know. So it's like, and then from 1983 on, they were trying to resolve the situation, and eventually Gotti kind of gets wind that Paul Castellano is going to have him killed, so he kind of strikes first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Paul Castellano wanted to have him killed after Christmas, and John Gotti was like, "No,
We're
let's have him
getting
killed
before Christmas.
December 16th."
That's so funny. Yeah, December 23rd, when
Yeah.
everyone's like checked out. I can't wait to spend Christmas with my family.
Yeah.
You want to talk about we'll talk about Sammy the Bull a little bit.
Yeah, do you know who he was raised by at all, Sammy the Bull?
I think his dad was like a tailor or something. Like he was from like a working class family.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was just a guy who like was always gonna be a criminal.
Be a killer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's guys like
Right.
that. They're like the most loyal. It seems at first. It's like a disability, and
Mhm.
they're also part of that is like, yeah, I'll kill for you if you
Mhm.
if you love me.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to truly love everybody in the mob. Like that.
Yeah.
That is what I realized when he does rat. He rats because he feels as though Gotti ratted on him.
Yeah, right.
And in my
Yeah.
opinion, like Gotti didn't rat enough.
Yeah.
But to a guy who like is crazy and loves you,
Yeah.
it's enough of a lie for him to be like, "Fuck it,
Yeah.
he betrayed me."
Well, the other thing is like Gotti wouldn't get close to anybody who didn't do time. Like he didn't, because there was a thing in the Gotti movie as well. Like he doesn't, and Sammy the Bull never really did time.
That's
So
right.
he kind of like sort of,
He messed up.
yeah, he sort of like broke his own rule by letting him get close. But also like, yeah, I guess you could say Sammy the Bull was kind of a gangster in the way that you're supposed to do it.
Just rat on everybody and look out for yourself.
Well, no, because like Scott said, I mean, he felt that Gotti kind of ratted on him and betrayed the ideals of what the mafia was. I sent you guys. There's a clip of him on that I saw on TikTok, and he's like, they go, "Who was the worst New York City boss?" And he's like, "I know it's kind of personal, but I gotta say John Gotti. He really wrecked the mafia," which is a very funny perspective. I never thought of it that way. He did kind of like ruin. He did sort of. You could look at it as that he ruined a good thing, ruined it for everybody.
I also think Sammy though, like, because again, it's such a beef between the two, and the whole time we're watching this issue between them. But what Sammy's doing is ratting out everybody. I mean, you know, once Gotti's up, it's like now they can look in everybody. And so part of me does think, even though Gotti did rat him out enough, he still, you have to take it. Like, you signed up for the mob, and part of signing up for the mob is like you take it.
Yeah. Well, I think he said he was going to go to jail. No, I was going to go to jail, and he was going to be free. He's like, that's a rat. That's a rat move. So
Yeah, I guess it's just like, it is, but it's like, again, you're not just getting him, you're getting everybody.
Yeah.
You're knocking down everything.
Yeah.
Like, Gotti did ruin the mob, and so did Sammy the Bull. They both ruined the mob, these two idiots. Unless it's still going on, it feels like the mob is done. I hope it's still flourishing and they just learned their lesson and they're hiding.
Well, you remember
mansions.
a few years ago, there was that like QAnon guy that killed the boss of the Gambino family
No,
in his
what?
driveway. Yeah.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, there was like some like Sicilian guy who was running the Gambino family, and this QAnon guy, but I don't know, I don't remember why he did it.
Oh, no.
This QAnon guy who was like a 28-year-old, like he backs his truck into the mob boss's car in his driveway. The guy comes out, he like looks at the damage, they end up like shaking hands, and then he pulls out a gun and kills the mafia boss.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which whatever happened with that, I forget.
I'm sure he pled out for insanity or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's like I'm so glad politics is back and QAnon is making people behead their fathers and kill mob bosses again.
Yeah, right.
Dude, it got so boring when it wasn't an election year, but
Yeah.
now political murder's back, baby.
Yeah.
But with Gotti, I guess, you know, I just wanted to kind of run through some of the biography. We were talking about he was the driver for Carmine Doc Fatico by age 17. He's already acting captain of the crew with the Fatico's legal problems. Gotti robbed trucks in the 1970s. He did it with Tommy DeSimone, who was Joe Pesci's character in Goodfellas. But kind of what makes him is in May 1973, Gotti and some others from the Gambino family, they kill James McBratney, who was an Irish gangster nicknamed Jimmy from Queens. May 1973, Gotti and two others, they go into a bar. They say, "We're detectives. We're taking you with us." And he's like, "You guys aren't no fucking cops." Yeah. And so they just shoot him and kill him in the bar. And they did that because he was, James McBratney was kidnapping mob members. He was kidnapping made guys and, you know, holding them for ransom. And at this time, Carlo Gambino was still alive. So one of the people that he kidnapped was Carlo Gambino's nephew, and they killed the guy. So Carlo Gambino puts out the hit, and John Gotti and his crew, they take it. And eventually...
Isn't it crazy that the three of us, we don't do anything like brave like that? We don't kidnap mobsters.
Dude, I don't even
We don't
sit
shoot
at a
IDF
bar.
soldiers with sniper rifles.
Yeah. Every time I hear like, oh, this guy was out and he got shot, it's like, I don't go out. Like, if I was doing crime, I definitely wouldn't go out.
Yeah.
I don't do nothing and I don't go out.
Yeah.
If I'm criming it up, I'm hiding all the time.
Yeah.
They're just out at bars.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Out of your mind.
I think they probably had places where they felt safe, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're also
Conduct business.
maybe
like-
not the smartest guys in the world.
It's
'Cause-
only 3 channels at the time, so you just
Right.
can't watch
true.
Netflix.
Yeah.
After you've been fucking kidnapping made guys
have
and
to
putting a
get-
target on your back.
yeah.
I would stay home and play
There's
PlayStation,
nothing-
but
there's nothing.
there was
on.
no PlayStation yet.
You have to leave the house. Yeah.
You're like, no, I can't watch another MASH rerun. I have to
Yeah.
go to this bar
Yeah.
that everybody knows I'm at. But it's actually really interesting.
Do you also think that like when you think of like reaching the top in life or what's important, like I said, obviously money's important, security's important, but being friends with famous people is kind of also cool.
It's cool, yeah.
You know, like the few people that we know that are kind of famous, it's nice to have those friends.
Yeah.
Like there's probably people who are rich but are like, how do I hang out with Nick Mullen? It's just there's I like that's what I'm saying is there's more to life than like accumulating money. That's kind of my main takeaway.
Yeah. I mean, it is a nice thing about the internet is you get to meet and spend time with just really cool, interesting people,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say was with regards to James McBratney and his murder, John Gotti only does 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because Carlo Gambino hires Roy Cohn for him. And Roy Cohn, of course, as an attorney, he worked with Joseph McCarthy at the McCarthy hearings. He's, of course, worked with Donald Trump, heavily involved in Republican politics, you know, very cutthroat, died of AIDS eventually. But Roy Cohn's fascinating because if you read like Whitney Webb, among others, she alleges he was heavily involved in like pedophile blackmail shit, like all sorts of really dark stuff. He was a very powerful Republican political operative. And so he's the attorney for John Gotti. He gets them this plea deal where John Gotti pleads to attempted manslaughter, you know, for just shooting a guy dead in a bar and does 4 years. And I just found that so interesting because it's like, well, Peter Dale Scott always talks about when, you know, he's like the guy who coined the term deep state. And the way he actually, and this term is so abused, what is a deep state? The way he actually defines it is these areas of interlink between intelligence agencies, organized crime, and business. Or you could substitute intelligence agencies with the political system. And so a guy like Roy Cohn is so fascinating because he moves between the mafia and the legitimate political world and the business and the legitimate business world, like Donald Trump or whoever. And he moves so seamlessly between all three of those arenas of what we call the deep state. And those are the kind of guys that I think define real power in this country. And so, and like another thing with Gotti is like the mafia, particularly in the 70s and the 80s, they were heavily involved with child pornography. Like,
Oh yeah.
There's this guy actually.
I didn't know that.
I know.
Hey, can we cut that part?
Yeah.
It's a pro-Italian episode. I never heard of an Italian doing anything like that.
I never heard. No Italian's ever done a thing like that.
Yeah, they all want to fuck old ladies.
Yeah.
The guy, like one of the guys that John Gotti would go down for killing at his final trial, is he would be caught on tape talking about murdering Robert DiBernardo, or DB, D-I-B. Robert DiBernardo was a guy who was, in Times Square in the 1970s, they were just openly selling child porn, which it's like, there's an M&M store there now.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
And they would have all those peep show booths and stuff. And like Robert DiBernardo, he was...
and then Giuliani cleaned it up.
People hate him for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is everyone mad at our hero Giuliani?
Bunch of pedophiles.
We're now a pro-Giuliani.
Miss the old New York.
Pro-Giuliani podcast.
Robert DiBernardo was... he ran one of the largest porn operations in the country. He was extremely wealthy. He was he becomes a member of the Gambino family. His competitors are threatened out of business or they're brought into his network. Tells some other porn producer, quote unquote, the family is in control of his porn business.
Mm-hmm.
But so he's murdered. He goes missing in 1986. And at the time, John Gotti's in jail. And he's caught on the federal wiretap discussing this murder. He says, quote, "When DB got whacked, they told me a story. I was in jail when I whacked him. I knew why it was being done. I done it anyways." And that's because like Sammy the Bull, I guess, told John Gotti that this guy, Robert DiBernardo, was talking bad about him behind his back. And then after he's killed in 1986, Sammy the Bull then John Gotti actually inherits his porn business.
The mafia is so annoying. You can't even like talk shit about people. You can't even like make fun of them.
But yeah, like at the time of his death, Robert DiBernardo was he was the target of a federal investigation into child pornography. And this is like, if you want to, at a future date, we'll talk about some of the serial killers that have some of these, snuff films or child porn or whatever, who actually distributes this shit. Organized crime. And so there are these kind of links that in glorification of the mafia, it doesn't get talked about a lot. And even the feds, when they're like in these documentaries bitching about why do these people look up to mob guys, well, they don't really talk about this kind of child porn stuff because I think it does kind of touch into networks of power in the federal government that people don't like to upset and would rather pretend don't exist. And I can expand on that in a later episode, but it was just
it's the federal government that's doing the child
There's
porn.
a lot of the intelligence agencies. There's a lot of powerful pedophile politicians who are blackmailed through that. So former House Speaker Dennis Hassert would be an example. He was a pedophile. He's used it to control him. I think Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this is kind of some dark shit, but my point is there are these kind of linkages between organized crime, big business, and the political system, and that's what defines real power in this country.
And you're saying child pornography is kind of the through line between...
It's a big linkage, yes.
Jesus. Mike's got to take down all his mobster posters.
Yeah.
He had a painting commission
Just
of all these
cleaning it.
guys sitting with Tony Soprano at a table eating.
Yeah.
But it's like, how else do you blackmail people and know that you have them under your thumb? Like, I mean, I guess if you can convict them of murder or whatever else, if they cross.
Thank
it.
God
Remember
now
in
it's
The Godfather?
now blackface is just as bad.
Yeah, if you have pictures of them doing blackface.
Yeah. Now it's easier to blackmail a person.
Yeah, nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
No kids are harmed in the
You
blackmail of politicians.
You gotta go, hey Vinny, come over here.
Yeah. That's what Jeffrey Epstein should have done. He should have just had blackface parties at his house.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, so John Gotti.
In The Godfather, when he's like, right now we got gambling and we got unions. Those are the best things to have. But drugs, what if he's like, right now we got gambling, we got unions, and we got child pornography. Those are the best things to have. But what about the drugs?
But okay, so Roy Cohn gets John Gotti this great deal. He does 4 years. He comes out of jail in 1977. Now he's a made man. And then Carlo Gambino dies in 1976. as we mentioned, he names Paul Castellano as his successor. He passes over the underboss, Neil Della Croce, who was a guy John Gotti admired and really looked up to. And actually, Neil Della Croce would die of cancer early December 1985. So it's like right after this guy dies, then finally John Gotti kills Paul Castellano. This guy was like a really old school guy that John Gotti looked up to as like, this guy should have been the boss. Instead, he was just the underboss. And when he finally dies, he's like, all right, now there's nothing stopping me from just killing Paul Castellano. And yeah, I mean, that's basically what happens. As we mentioned, in 1983, 16 members of Gotti's crew are indicted, some on narcotics charges. Gotti goes to Neil Della Croce, tries to get him to intercede. But then, Paul Castellano gets indicted by Rudy Giuliani in the commission case in February 1985, where Rudy Giuliani, as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, he indicts the heads of all the 5 families all at once. So Paul Castellano, when he's murdered, he's out on $3 million bail, and he's shot and killed by John Gotti. And, so then after December 1985, Gotti's the boss. And he remains that way until he's finally convicted, I believe, in 91 is when they finally get him. Yeah. And, I have some details about some of the trials if we want to talk about that.
Sure. We can go into that, or we can talk about John Gotti Jr. He tried to have Curtis Sliwa killed.
It's pretty cool, yeah, because Sliwa was like
He's talking
bad-mouthing John Gotti on his radio show.
And his father.
So, yeah, John Gotti Jr., they had 3 hung juries, and then finally the feds gave up on trying to convict him for trying to have Curtis Sliwa kidnapped and killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Gotti Jr., I mean, it's like, and that's another thing, obviously his father wasn't shy about publicity, but he's like so all over the cameras where he's like willing to cooperate and make this documentary about his life, his father's life and all that, It's just a very different generation, but it also kind of shows... I mean, his father grew up in abject poverty on the streets where he grew up relatively comfortable. I mean, he's like, any of us, probably a more upper class lifestyle than we had.
Yeah, I think John Gotti Jr. kind of did his best for being John Gotti's son.
Yeah.
I think, he did grow up a little comfortable, but he was, I don't know, he's a pretty likable guy, I think.
Yeah, he seems fine.
Yeah.
He kept after he took over his boss.
He could have been a total idiot.
After he took over his boss, when his father was put in jail, the police raided him in 1997, and they found a list of all of the made members of the mafia.
Oh, really?
Of the Gambino family.
Okay.
It was all over the papers. They were calling him an idiot.
Yeah. Well, John Gotti Sr. is on...
I sympathize. It's hard to remember names,
Yeah.
You're like, you want to keep a notes app.
Yeah. All the girls I had sex with. What's this other one? What's under this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and even like John Gotti Sr. is on tapes being like, "You tell him that me, John Gotti, will sever his motherfucking head off." Just like very, but what did he really do that they didn't like? He was just out in public all the time. It's like he wasn't doing anything illegal. I think they were just jealous because he had swag and they didn't.
Yeah, basically. I mean, they still complain about him getting that Teflon Don nickname because they don't like that he beat 3 cases.
Right.
Which, it was, we mentioned this refrigerator repairman, Rommel Pajcik is a Polish refrigerator repairman, honked at him in Queens in 1984. Gotti and his friends punched and robbed him. He immediately goes to an NYPD cop nearby and is like, "Hey, this guy just beat the shit out of me and robbed me." So they arrest John Gotti. And this was in 1984. But then in February 1986, John Gotti's now the boss of the family. And then the Queens district attorney, they bring him to trial over this. And of course, Pajcik is beaten. He's put in a hospital in Nassau, Queens. No longer wants to testify. They force him to. And then he's, in the courtroom, he says he can't identify John Gotti. So then the New York Post headline the next day is "I Forgotti," because he couldn't identify John Gotti. And this is the first big trial where he wears this $2,000 suit. And this kind of starts him off on this massive media celebrity because he's all over the news media of police suspect this guy was behind the Paul Castellano hit. Yeah. And now he's in court, December he does the hit. nothing but news stories about how he's the new boss. February, he's in court. He's wearing $2,000 suits. And then this guy's like, I have no idea who actually hit me in this traffic stop.
Yeah.
And, so he just kind of creates his own media frenzy, and especially with like the New York papers.
All he did was honk at him.
Yeah, I guess there was like a double parking thing, or I forget if like John Gotti was double parking, and like so he just like hit the horn at him.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's just go GTA 4.
Yeah.
Just jack him out of his car and beat him up.
Why do you think he was so well liked?
Like if you listen to the interviews with like people who would be in the neighborhood in like Little Italy or whatever, you'll see these old Italian ladies go, "Yeah, my car was broken into in every neighborhood in the city except this one."
Yeah.
So he's obviously they give out turkeys on Christmas or all that kind of bullshit.
Which seems like a lot of fun.
It
just to
sounds
stand
very
on
nice.
a truck while they're throwing turkeys to.
Yeah.
And they always go, "He kept the neighborhood safe." Which I don't know what that. I think we know what
I think
that
we know
means.
what they're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first trial that he beats. Then the Eastern District of New York, September 1986, they charge him with RICO.
Yeah.
Which,
because you're right, a lot of the stuff a lot of the lore of the mafia is kind of a lie.
yeah, I mean they're parasites on the neighborhood, but
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah,
like
they're Italians telling a story. It's a lie. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're good at telling stories.
We was the toughest men.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they don't work.
They don't do anything.
They just sit down
except
all
wear
day.
big furry coats.
Yeah,
it is true though.
Yeah.
It is true. Like some of the nostalgia is accurate in the sense that these mob guys were parasites on the neighborhood. They just sat around. They didn't work. They took money from legitimate business. But then they all get thrown in jail, and what are they replaced with? Private equity and finance.
Right.
They all sit around.
Yeah.
They don't work. They take money from legitimate business, but they don't even live in the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah, and they're
Like-
not funny.
Right.
They're not funny.
They're not.
They have no
they're not
personality.
charming guys.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like, now it's just all mafia activities have been replaced with, bankers in New York or private equity guys who just go and fucking smash up some business in Ohio and wipe out the pension and the healthcare and lay off, 20% of the workforce and then flip it. And it's like they do far more damage. And they're far bigger parasites.
Yeah.
They operate with far bigger tax breaks, but they don't live in the neighborhood. They're not part of the community, and they're not going to make sure your car doesn't get broken into.
Right.
They're not going to. They have all the same parasitism without any of the benefits. So things have gotten worse, I think.
That's what they said about Vegas when the mob ran Vegas. At least they would kind of like it was a little more personal.
They would comp you.
They would comp you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're a high roller. Yeah.
I guess that's why my great uncle would steal towels from hotels all the time because he missed the old days of getting the free.
When they used to give them to him.
Yeah, when they used to give him the towels, he's like, "Fuck this."
Okay, so the second trial, Gotti is in September 1986. He gets hit with RICO charges, murder, gambling, loan sharking, truck hijacking. The government at this point had never lost a RICO case. And we mentioned, that Willie Boy Johnson was revealed as an FBI informant at the trial. Diane Giacolano. Yeah, Diane Giacolano was the assistant U.S. attorney.
Giacolano. Oh, okay.
Giacolano. I don't know, whatever it is.
Giacolone.
Yeah. But she was the assistant U.S. attorney. She's interviewed in the Netflix doc, and I looked it up on the Red, and everybody's like, this fucking idiot bitch. She got a man killed. How dare she speak in public?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's like, and she does seem like, it seems like they brought a very thin case, and they revealed this guy's an FBI informant and got him killed for absolutely no reason. And then she's in the documentary like, well, if he only has himself to blame for the lifestyle he led, that led to his murder. It's like,
yeah, okay, lady.
he got the shit kicked out of him by his father. He grew up in the streets in poverty. He was racially abused most of his life. And it's like, he cooperated with the feds, but then he got thrown to the wolves. He clearly had some brain damage. I mean, it's a tragic story, whatever. But anyway, so he's found John Gotti's found not guilty. He's the first guy ever to beat a RICO case. Because his it was partly because the government used a lot of impeachable witnesses, like people who had dealt drugs or committed murders. So his attorneys got him on cross-examination. But it's also because a juror was paid $60,000. So like, that was the other incompetent thing the feds did is they didn't hide the jury coming and going from the media. So the mafia was like, we just find a juror, and Sammy the Bull Gravano says he gave a juror $60,000.
Oh,
obviously
it's
with
great.
the undertone being, if you don't take this money, we're gonna fucking kill you.
Right.
Yeah, I
So-
would take it in a heartbeat. That's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
You get called for jury duty. You're like, I'm gonna die. This sucks. Oh my god, it's the Gotti case. Even worse, I might get harmed. And then you get $60,000.
You get called for jury duty. You're like, mafia case.
Yeah,
Mafia
yeah.
case.
I wonder if they took it back
Do
from
me a
him.
favor. Just say you don't know nothing about child pornography. Okay, and you're gonna give me what? $4,000.
And then Gotti beats this case, and then immediately after he beats it, he buys a boat named Not Guilty,
That's cool.
and he gets the Dapper Don nickname.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then, of course, he's the new boss of the Gambinos. He used to be running that club in Ozone Park, Queens, the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, but now he takes over the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy, which is the traditional Gambino hangout social club. And he takes it over. He renovates it. That becomes his new base of operations. I was just looking this up. The Ravenite Social Club is now a men's clothing store in Little Italy as of 2022, and the Bergen Hunt and Fish Social Club is now a T-Mania.
Sells a bunch of tiny suits.
A T-Mania in a Spanish-speaking church in Ozone Park, Queens. And yeah, I don't know. I think it is a bad thing that all these social clubs are gone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, nobody like hangs out anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody who doesn't have a job just goes there, waits for their envelopes to arrive, and drinks cappuccino.
Yeah. So he wasn't like running around cheating on his wife.
I don't know. I'm sure he had some affairs, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, no, he had a mistress. Yeah.
Yeah. But
an age-appropriate mistress.
Yeah. For an Italian guy, he basically didn't. You know,
Exactly.
if you compared him to other Italians.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I like about Johnny Sack in Sopranos.
Yeah, he doesn't cheat on
Just
his
doesn't
wife.
cheat on his 400-pound wife. Great story.
Yeah. But anyway, so, and then the Netflix documentary talks about the New York State Organized Crime Task Force. They had a bug up in the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, his Queens club, and then somebody goes back over the tapes and they find Gotti in 1986 talking about, we're going to bust him up. He's talking about John O'Connor, the VP of the local 608 United Carpenters Union. He was shot and wounded as a warning. So in January 1989, New York State Organized Crime Task Force brings a case to the Manhattan DA. They arrest John Gotti. January 1990, the New York State trial begins. This tape is played at trial. The jury finds him not guilty on all counts. And the New York State allows cameras in the court. There are no cameras in federal trials. So this increases his celebrity status. And it was like, just because they only had like one tape of him saying, we're going to bust him up, and the audio is not clear. So his lawyers were kind of able to create some doubt in the jury's mind. But it's like, at this point, he's beaten, you know, the original one was the Queens DA. He beat that. Then he beat a federal RICO case, and now he's beat a New York State case. So this is where he gets the Teflon Don nickname. And, you know, he goes back to Little Italy. There's like people shooting off fireworks. It's a giant party.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
I mean, they didn't do that for Gas Pipe or Gigante or Tony Salerno. It's like nobody was as popular.
No. Yeah, I mean, there's a
sucks for you guys, but
victory party in the Ravenite Social Club.
yeah.
And it is just
it's
like
great to be popular.
It's nice to see all that old footage, you know. It's like when
we don't have anybody like that.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was like there was some of that when OJ beat the murder charge.
Sure.
And you know, there's a bunch of white people angry, a bunch of black people celebrating, but it's like it's cool when people beat the government.
Sure.
Nobody likes the feds.
Yeah. I'll tell you, doing this episode has reminded me that I'm glad I don't do a mafia podcast anymore, because it's fun, it's interesting, but sometimes it is kind of the same story.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Oh yeah, and they all suffer the same fate.
Yeah.
They'll die in prison or get shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, none of them are ever like, oh, I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I dedicated my life to crime. I guess that's it. We could finish over on the Patreon if you want. You guys want to plug anything or any final thoughts?
Oh, I got shows to plug if you want to give me a second.
Let's hear them. Oh, yeah. We're doing an Out for Smokes live show on February 5th. February 5th at the St. Mark's Comedy Club right here in New York City. Our producer, Johnny, is booking the St. Mark's Comedy Club right now.
He's like, I'm editing that part out.
Oh, can we not?
No.
All right. So yeah, congrats. It's very good. I got some road dates coming up. I will be in Raleigh February 14th at Valentine's Day. For Valentine's Day at Charlie Goodnight's, and then I'll be in Chicago March 3rd. I'll be in Cleveland March 8th, Cincinnati March 9th, and then I will be in what the hell? I think that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'll be in Charlotte June 2nd. Go to microcinecomedy.com to get your tickets.
Yeah. Just get. Oh, do you want to plug?
Sure. Yeah. Next weekend, February 7th, or he got this wrong. Lewis made this, I looked this up. It's like February 9th through the 10th, and he put 7th to the 8th. He's wrong.
Yeah.
And this is on his poster that he made and put online, and it's the inaccurate dates. But anyway,
what does that even mean? The meaty. Oh, the mediocre.
So it's like mediocre, but he's a mediocre. Yeah. But anyway, I'm opening for Luis Gomez in Saratoga Springs, February 9th and 10th, I believe, as well as in Poughkeepsie, February 16th to the 17th. And I'm in Connecticut with Anthony DeVito, February 24th. It's a Ryan Brouth gig. I don't know what town that is in Connecticut.
Yeah. So what if Luis J. Gomez just actually tried to spell mediocre?
You know what? I thought I hated that part of comedy where you have to send emails and get yourself booked. I think I'm starting to like it now.
That's good.
It's like you're like it's like getting on your phone and closing deals.
Yeah.
You got a cold call.
Yeah.
And nobody
gotta
is
hustle.
You got to hustle. Malcolm X said everything in life's a hustle.
Sell me this dick joke.
Yeah.
Wait, give me 60 seconds though. Let me just finish the John Gotti story because I don't want to.
I
don't want to talk about this on the Patreon. We'll have current events. We'll have QAnon guy beheading his father. But just the end of the John Gotti story is December 1990. Sammy the Bull, Frank Locascio, who was the consigliere. Sammy the Bull was the underboss. John Gotti. They're all arrested by the feds. Those 1986 Organized Crime Task Force tapes are combined with the 1990 Fed tapes because the feds in like 89, 88, 90, they had gotten a bug up in above the Ravenite Social Club. They tried to bug the Ravenite. There was no interesting conversations. They realized John Gotti and his associates, his high-level associates, they would go up to the old lady's apartment above, and they would just tell this 90-year-old lady, like,
she was like a widow. Her husband used to be in the mob.
Yeah. They would just tell her, like, yeah, here's $100. Just, take a walk. And they would discuss murder or whatever. So the feds, they get a bug up there in the apartment. And this is just like too much audio evidence. They can't impeach the witnesses. They can't, say nobody knows what he's saying on this tape. Because as we mentioned, he's talking about murdering Robert DiBernardo, this child pornographer, and these other people. And, so at the trial, they play the tapes, and they have tapes of Gotti bad-mouthing Sammy the Bull, which in turn makes Sammy the Bull flip to the feds at the trial. Sammy the Bull, he tells the feds he paid that juror $60,000 in the previous RICO trial, confessed to 19 murders, explained the detail of the Paul Castellano hit. Eventually, he's released after 5 years in prison, and you can still hear him in like podcast interviews and shit, arguing with Vlad TV or whoever.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
And John Gotti gets life, and he dies in prison of cancer in 2002.
Yeah.
And, but he's still alive in our hearts.
Yeah. And just pretend that he didn't do the child pornography stuff when when you need inspiration. That's the thing. Life is complicated. People are complicated, but you try to see the good in everybody.
Well, yeah, it's like
right,
the Super
folks?
Bowl is like the high, right? It's like the #1 sex trafficking thing in the country. It's like Super Bowl weekend wherever it's taking place.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but everyone enjoys the Super Bowl and no one wants to talk about it. And
Yeah, right.
It's just like, the weird world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you got to find the good. Find the good in people. Find the good stories. You can do it. We love spending an hour of your week with you. And we'll see you over on Patreon, patreon.com/outforsmokes. Bye, everybody. See you next time.